Hello again, my little mathematicians. Today we are going to explore trapezoids. A trapezoid is a type of quadrilateral, a four-sided figure that only has one pair of parallel sides. So a pair of sides that never intersect. Those are the two bases. These sides, if you extend these lines, will intersect. So do you see how if this line extends and this line extends, they intersect up there? So they're not a parallelogram. It's called a trapezoid. It has a different formula. This formula is 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times the height. Okay, now the reason that there's two bases is because the bases are the parallel sides, and you can tell just by looking, they're not the same length. It's like a parallelogram, all pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Clearly, these are not. So one of them is one base, the other one's a second base. It doesn't matter if you put this as base 1 and this is base 2. It doesn't matter. Okay, your height is the perpendicular distance, and you know it's perpendicular because it'll have that little like box indicating so. It's the perpendicular distance that separates one base from the other. So a lot of times what I like to do is I find that little box and I highlight it in like that line, and it connects one base to the other base. For this one, it doesn't seem like that big a deal because obviously like here's the base and then it's the parallel side to it, opposite and parallel, two bases. But sometimes eventually like they'll start rotating figures and it'll get more confusing. So look for that little box that indicates a right angle, and it connects, like that's your height, and it connects your two bases together. All right, and now you have your base 1, base 2, and your height for your formula, and you just multiply it by 1/2. Some people also prefer it like this. It's saying the same thing. Base 1 plus base 2 times the height. And yes, base 1 and base 2 are in parentheses because you add those first, then multiply it by the height, and then divide it by 2, or multiply by 1/2, because multiplying by 1/2 is the same thing as dividing by 2. All right, that's my formula I'm going to be using. And remember what we just talked about. A trapezoid is a quadrilateral, a four-sided figure with only one pair of opposite sides that are parallel. If you ever see that little symbol right there, that means parallel. And then those two opposite sides that are parallel to each other are called the two bases. The bases of a trapezoid have different lengths, as we talked about, okay? And you can even tell by looking at them. The height of the trapezoid forms a 90-degree or right angle with both the bases. And again, look for that little triangle. Look for that little box right there to indicate the right angle. The other two sides of the trapezoid are referred to as the legs. So if they ever talk about like, oh, the legs are this, you don't use those in the area formula. The only time you would use the leg measurements is if they ask you about the perimeter of it, then you'd add all the outside edges and you would ignore the height if you're finding the perimeter. Okay, let's go ahead and actually try some of these. What would be helpful is if we draw ourselves a little picture. And I know that this trapezoid looks like this, but when I draw a trapezoid, to me, the easiest way is to just draw it like this, because I'm not caring about the legs, right? So when it talks about the height, there's your perpendicular distance that separates your two bases. So that's how I like to draw my trapezoids, okay? It's still a trapezoid. It has one base with 8 and a second base of 17. So here's the longer one, here's the shorter one, and it has a height of 4. And these were all in terms of centimeters. So I drew my picture that I can reference. And now I want to write out my formula. It's talking about a trapezoid. So my trapezoid formula is 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times the height. So again, 1/2 times my two bases are the 17 and 8, times my height, that perpendicular distance that separates my two bases, which is 4. Now remember, parentheses means do me first. So let's go ahead and add those two numbers. 17 plus 8 is 25. Bring the other stuff down. Now here, you're multiplying 1/2 times 25 times 4. think when you're multiplying, what's 2 times 3? 6. Switch them. What's 3 times 2? Still 6, right? 3 times 2 is the same as 2 times 3. You can multiply things out of order if you're just multiplying. So you could go half of 25, which is 12 and a half times 4, or I think it's easier like to do half of 4, right? Because you can go out of order. So when all that's left is multiplying. So I'm going to go half of 4 is 2, and then 2 times 25 is 50. And that way I don't have to use a calculator and I can just do it in my head. Okay. But if you don't trust yourself, sure, use a calculator. I just wanted to point out that you can go out of order. You can take half of 4 and then multiply that answer times the 25. That is totally an option. Okay, now I found the area, so my units were squared. So down here, my answer is 50 centimeters squared. For my next one, let's draw another trapezoid because it's talking about trapezoid, and I'm going to draw it my way. Okay, you can draw it like that too. That's still a trapezoid. Okay, so it says you have a height of 14 kilometers, and you have bases of 6 and 9. So the longer one and the shorter one. All right, it's a trapezoid, so trapezoid formula. Remember, I said you could use either one. So let's do this one this time, saying the same thing. Okay, base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. Now, after I show you both ways, you can pick whichever way you like better. Some people like doing the half in front. Some people like doing divided by 2. Whichever formula makes the most sense to you. Okay, that's the one you can always use. I'm just going to show you both ways. Okay, my two bases we said were 6 and 9. And then my height that separated them was 14 divided by 2. As always, parentheses first. So 6 plus 9 is 15 times that 14 over 2. And then you could go 15 times 14, then divide that answer by 2. But I like to cross cancel if possible, so I can reduce this. 2 can go into both of these. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 14 divided by 2 is 7. And now you have 7 times 15. So I just have to type that one thing into my calculator. 7 times 15 is what? When you type that in, you get 105. And my unit was kilometers. Since it's area, it is kilometers squared. All right, next one. You have a trapezoid again. So let's draw another trapezoid. And you know, as I said, I've been drawing them like this, but we can draw them like the example one. Why not? Okay, so then this time, clearly these aren't perpendicular, right? They don't go straight down. So the perpendicular height would have to be inside then. So there's my trapezoid. Let's label it with what it says. It says a trapezoid has bases with the length of 11 and 16. So here's the shorter, there's the longer. It's in terms of feet. And then it says that it has a height of 4 feet. So I'm going to put that for my height. Okay. By the way, if you have 2 different colored pens when you're doing this, simple suggestion, I recommend drawing your shape in one color and then your lengths in another color, because otherwise, if you do them all the same color, I've seen it happen where some kids think that the height is 14 because they see one of those dashes as a 1 in front of the 4, versus if it was in a different color, you wouldn't make that confusion and you'd see this as just a 4. Just a suggestion, because I see that happen way too many times on tests. Again, draw your shape one color and then you're like labeling another color. It just helps keep the track of things. All right, so my formula is area equals 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times the height. Okay, so 1/2 just stays 1/2. I'm going to substitute in numbers for my 2 bases of 11 and 16 times my height, which they said is 4. All right. In the parentheses first, so 11 plus 16 is 27. Bring down the 4 and the half. I could take half of 4, which is 2. So now I just have 2 times 27. And what is 2 times 27? It is 54. And it's about feet, so I'm going to go feet squared. All right, the last one on this page. It's another trapezoid. So sure, let's draw it the way that the example drew it, like this. But you could draw them like this, same thing. Okay, and let's do my lengths in a different color. So the height of the trapezoid is 10 inches. The bottom is 2 feet. And the top is 1 foot. Before I start with my base 1 plus base 2 times height divided by 2, are you seeing any issues before I start plugging this in? Yeah, this is inches and these are feet. So I need to change them. It's easier to always go to the lesser unit. Rather than bring this one to the bigger unit, it's easier to change the bigger unit to the lesser unit. Otherwise, you might get fractional amounts. Okay, so I want to change 1 foot into inches. So I want feet to cancel, and I want to change it to inches. I can go straight from feet to inches. So let's get feet across from each other so that they cancel out. And then what is my conversion? 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So if I just multiply the number of feet times 12, that will tell me how many inches it is. Well, 1 times 12 is 12. So 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So I can replace that. Now what's 2 feet equal to? Some of you guys already did that in your head. Okay, 2 feet. I want feet to cancel. I can go from feet to inches because 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. Feet cross cancels. I'm left with the unit of inches, and 2 times 12 is 24. So you have 24 inches. 2 feet is the same thing as 24 inches. Now all of my shape is in terms of inches, 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 inches. I can start plugging my numbers in. You cannot substitute in your values unless they're all in the same unit. Okay, so I have one base is 12. The other base is 24. My height is 10, and I'm going to divide it by 2. Inside the parentheses first, 12 plus 24. When you add those, you get 36 times 10 divided by 2. They're both even, so 2 can go into them. Pick one. I always like to do the bigger one to make it smaller. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and half of 36 is 18. Now I just have 18 times 10, which means it's 180 because you just tack on a 0. These are all in terms of inches, so my unit is inches squared, 180 inches squared. That one was pretty tough. Okay, for this year, I'd consider that one of the toughest ones that we'd have for trapezoids. Let's go ahead and try some more. Okay, this time we're going to be finding the area and the perimeter. So this is when they're going to give a bunch of extra information, and it's helpful if I find that little box, and that little box connects the height to my 2 bases, right? Because this line connects this one to this one. So those are my 2 bases, and that's my height. Why not do that for all of my shapes? That's my height, and it connects this base to this base. That's my height right here, and it connects this base, right? This line connects this line and this line. Here's my box, so that's my height, and it connects this base to this base. Now that might make it a little bit easier for my area. So area is base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. Yeah, I want you to write the formula out each time so that hopefully by the end you'll memorize it. Okay, my 2 bases are 11 and 15 times my height, which is 6, divided by 2. So let's go ahead and add those first. 15 plus 11, you get 26 times 6 divided by 2. And you could do 2 into 6 or 2 into 26. I want to do the bigger number. So half of 2 is 1. Half of 26 is 13. Now I just type in 13 times 6, and I get 78. And this was in terms of centimeters, so I'm going to put centimeters squared. For the perimeter, you add the outside edges. Is 6 part of the outside? No. So just the outside edges. So I have 6.8, this 15, that 7.4, and that 11. I'm going to go ahead and add all those in my calculator. So type in 6.8, hit plus, and then 15, hit plus, 7.4, hit plus, plus 11, and you get 40.2 centimeters. Remember, perimeter is just centimeters, area is centimeters squared. If you haven't tried any of these yourself, why not pause the video, try it yourself, and then unpause it and check yourself with us. Okay, my formula for this one, same thing, base 1 plus base 2 times height divided by 2. One base is 1.9. The other base is 4.5. My height was 3.7. So let's go ahead and add those first. 1.9 plus 4.5. When you add those, you get 6.4 in your calculator. Okay. You can take half of this and then multiply it, or let's just multiply it out. 6.4 times 3.7. Okay. Then hit divided by 2. What did you get? Do that in your calculator. Okay. Hopefully you got area equals 11.84. And then it was yards, so yards squared. For the perimeter, you go along the outside. So you have this 3.9 plus, right here is 1.9 plus that 4 plus right there, that 4.5. Remember, these are all quadrilaterals. So when you're adding the perimeter, you should always have 4 different sides that you're adding up. Go ahead and type that all into your calculator. Okay, you typed it in. And what did you get? You should have gotten 14.3 yards. Is it yards or yards squared? Just yards, because it was perimeter. Okay, the last two, definitely hit pause if you need to. Try it yourself. And now you're back with us. Okay, you paused it, you did it. Now you hit unpause. We're all together. Write out your formula. And again, I know you're like, oh, I've written it so many times, but hopefully you'll get it memorized after a while if you write it so many times. Okay. Base 1, so remember this height connects your 2 bases. So one base is 7.5, the other base is 10.4. Times your height. The height is what separates your 2 bases. Do that first inside parentheses. Add your 2 bases. You should get 17.9. Remember, you can always speed up or slow down the video too. Okay, type in 17.9 times 14.5 divided by, that's what the fraction bar means, divided by 2. Okay, and when you did that, what did you get? You should have gotten 129.775. It's meters or meters squared. Which one? We're talking about area, so it should have been meters squared. Okay, for your perimeter, along the outside, you have that 7.5 plus this 15.5 plus that 10.4 plus that 15.5. Again, perimeter is always along the outside. And if you want, you can kind of trace it as you go. Like, see how I crossed off each side as I wrote it? And that way you make sure you don't repeat any and you don't miss any. And there's always be 4 sides because you're dealing with a quadrilateral. Type those all into your calculator. You should have gotten 48.9 meters or meters squared? Perimeters are just meters. Okay, and finally, our last problem. If you haven't tried any by yourself yet, please do this one. Okay, hit pause, try it, and then unpause when you're ready to check it with us. Okay, so your two bases are parallel to each other, so they're opposite, separated by your height. So you have 4.3 is one base, and 8.6 is the other base. Your height is 7.8, and it's all over 2. So type that in. What's 4.3 plus 8.6? What do you get? You should get 12.9. You're going to multiply that by 7.8 and then divide it by 2. Okay, type that in. What did you get? Hopefully you got 50.31. This was in terms of millimeters. So is it millimeters or millimeters squared? Well, it was area, so it should be millimeters squared. Finally, for your perimeter, your outside edges, you have 7.8 plus that 8.6 plus that 8.7 plus this 4.3. Okay, go ahead and type that all into your calculator. What do you get? 29.4 millimeters or millimeters squared? Yeah, just millimeters. If you got all those right, congratulations, Munchkins. Those were pretty tough. If not, like try and rewatch them, retry them, and then maybe do some of the extra practice pages in your packet.